Out here with the little shitties, watching them play around and enjoy their food. You know what was also enjoyable? Surprisingly, today's race at Michigan. The one back in June sucked ass, but this one was much better. And we're going to get into it all here right now, so let's get into it. This is the fuel. What's happening, ladies and germs? This is the PackerMan, and welcome to tonight's edition of The Fuel. It's been a while since I've done a review in the outdoors, but it's nice and cool this evening, and I figured why the hell not. This week we're going to be reviewing the Consumers Energy 400 at Michigan International Speedway, as the little kittens decide to jerk around over here. They probably won't be jumping up on the table at the very least. But before we get into all that, it's time for the news of the week. So there was a lot of bad blood that came out of Watkins Glen after this past coming week. One of the notable feuds was between Jimmy Johnson and Ryan Blaney. If you recall, Blaney spun Johnson at Watkins Glen, and Johnson was none too pleased. He actually went to Blaney after the race and confronted him about it. And of course, in his post-race interview said that Blaney's lips was quivering and all that stuff, and Blaney was none too happy about that. Well, apparently they decided, eventually they did make peace. They apparently talked it over while they were at Michigan, and they made peace about it. So at least that's two drivers that aren't going to be clashing, at least for the time being. And a bit of IndyCar news. McLaren has teamed up with Schmidt-Peterson Racing for a full 2020 campaign. Now, a lot of us kind of expected this to happen. McLaren was kind of on again, off again, on again, and off again about competing in IndyCar full-time. And Fernando Alonso himself made it clear that he wasn't interested in a full-time campaign, although obviously he was interested in competing in the Indianapolis 500 for obvious reasons. But yeah, it looks like we're going to be seeing McLaren full-time next year, teaming up with Schmidt-Peterson Racing. The only thing I don't like about this is if this doesn't increase Schmidt-Peterson's car count from 2 to at least 3 or maybe even 4, then I feel like this alliance is kind of pointless. So we'll have to wait and see how that comes about. And before this race, Richard Childress Racing had both cars of Austin Dillon and Daniel Hemrick had their qualifying times disallowed for not fully functional alternators, which is kind of weird. Like, what is that supposed to mean? From what I've heard from some people, if an alternator is not fully functional, I guess it's less strain on the engine. The problem with that is you kind of need the alternator to recharge the battery, which also kind of runs the water pump and anything electrical and all that other good stuff. So not sure what messing with the alternator is supposed to do, but yeah, I guess that's what they were sent to the rear of the field for. And Martin Truex Jr. was also sent to the rear of the field for failing pre-race inspection twice. So there's that. And both RCR cars also got deducted 10 points. So that basically puts Austin Dillon in a must-win situation. I mean, he was already in one to begin with, but now it really does. But now that that's out of the way, let's go ahead and get into tonight's race review. It's starting to get dark out here, so let's go ahead and get into this. So the breakdown was like this. Stages 1 and 2 were 60 laps, and stage 3 was 80 laps. Brad Keselowski, Michigan native, starts from the pole and leads on lap number 1 after a good clean start from everyone. Joey Logano and Ryan Blaney go by William Byron for 4th and 5th respectively. And of course, like I said, Truex had to start from the rear of the field after failing pre-race tech, and its 6 laps was already up to 15th. Freaking mosquitoes out here. Maybe this wasn't such a good idea, but you know. But as it would turn out, he would get up further up the field than that. Harvick is right on Kez's bumper, but can't make a move yet. Johnson scrapes the wall off turn 2 and loses a right rear tire, and that pretty much put him behind the 8 ball for the remainder of the race. I mean, I think he finished like 8 laps down. And of course, he's trying to get into the playoffs, so that's really going to affect his chances going forward with 3 races remaining. Ryan Blaney slingshots past Bowman for 4th, and then Hamlin goes by Blaney for 4th after getting by Bowman. And then Harvick loses a right front tire on lap 33 running 2nd, but he would recover from it. We had our first pure lead change of the day when Denny Hamlin gets by Keselowski on lap 40. Truex moves up to 4th after starting last, like I said. We had green flag pit stops beginning en masse on lap 44. Hamlin pits from the lead on lap 46. Kyle Larson gets busted for speeding, although he would recover for a nice finish himself. Truex takes just fuel and cycles out with the lead with 13 laps to go in stage 1. So it's pretty obvious he was going for playoff points at this point. Hamlin gets by Logano for 2nd in turns 3 and 4. Eventually would run down Truex, and in amongst a bunch of lap cars, Hamlin would take the lead on lap 57, when Truex slid up a little bit in turns 3 and 4 and got trapped behind a couple of lap cars. But Truex and Hamlin begin fighting in amongst themselves for the lead amongst all those lap cars, and Truex actually makes a 3-wide pass on Hamlin and another car for a 3rd pure lead change on lap 58. And then Truex, on no tires by the way, while Hamlin had 4 tires, would hold Denny Hamlin at bay and win stage number 1. That was pretty impressive. He went from last to 1st in 60 laps. Again, pretty friggin' impressive. Doesn't look like I'll be able to turn the light on, so at least while it's facing me. But everyone comes in for service, and everyone was on all sorts of agendas, so the pit strategy was all over the place. So go to stage number 2. Keselowski leads the start of stage 2. Kyle Busch inside the top 10 on this restart. Truex makes it back up to 5th after taking 4 tires. Truex gets by Bowman for 3rd. Kurt Busch, who had a great run today, didn't get the finish he wanted though, gets by Eric Jones for 5th. Truex gets by Hamlin for 6th, 0.65 seconds behind Keselowski. Truex begins challenging Keselowski for the lead on lap 77. And then Kurt Busch starts closing in on Bowman for 4th and takes it. And then we had back-to-back pure lead changes during a commercial break, which really pissed me off. Truex had a run on Keselowski coming off of 4 and led at the line. That was our 4th pure lead change in lap 82, but Keselowski was able to hold him off and keep the lead, which ended up being our 5th pure lead change on lap 83. Hamlin gets by Truex for 2nd after Truex fails to get by Keselowski for the lead. Truex lost his momentum, and Hamlin was able to get by for the race lead. But then Truex gets back by Hamlin for 2nd a few laps later and begins closing back in on Keselowski for the lead. And then Truex pulls a slingshot move on Keselowski down the back stretch for the lead, and that was our 6th pure lead change of the day on lap 91. I'm just going to go ahead and say it right now. This race was a lot more competitive than the one back in June. I don't know if it was because of the PJ1 that they put down on the high lane, or if we just didn't have an overly dominant car like we did in June with Joey Logano. I don't know. The package is the same, but the outcome of this race was significantly different. Also, it was a much more sunny and warm today than it was back in June, I think. So I think that also played a part as well. But either way, this race was much better than the one back in June. I'll tell you that much. The second act for a lot of these tracks seems to be a lot better. I mean, Pocono was the same way. I mean, the first race sucked, and then the second race was actually decent. This was actually a pretty good Michigan race, all things considered. Alright, where was I at? I left off with the 6th pure lead change, okay? Hamlin gets by Keselowski for 2nd, and then Kurt Busch by Keselowski for 3rd. Harvick gets by Bowman for 5th, so even though Harvick had that flat right front tire, it turns out it was just a puncture. So he was back up in contention. Hamlin starts closing back in on Truex with Kurt Busch lurking in 3rd. Hamlin had a long run car. Bowman kicks off green flag pit stops on lap 107. Truex pits from the lead on lap 110, does fuel only again, once again going for the stage win. And it would have worked out had the caution not come out on lap 116 when Keselowski loses the right rear tire going into turn 3 and spins out, but saves the car. Several cars comes in for service. Truex leads on the restart with 1 lap to go in the stage, but Kyle Busch manages to take the lead from Truex in turn 2 when he got a great push from, I think it was Eric Jones. And Kyle Busch ends up winning stage 2, basically stealing the stage win away from Truex. Austin Dillon, Daniel Hemrick, and Eric Almirola make contact off turn 4 when the 10 of Almirola pushed up and basically puts himself and Daniel Hemrick into the wall. They also make contact with Austin Dillon, who went spinning through the grass. So Daniel Hemrick and Eric Almirola both get heavy damage with Almirola spinning down the front stretch. Austin Dillon was able to continue, but was not able to do the Austin three-peat. And what I mean by that is Austin Hill won the truck race, which was also at Michigan, and Austin Cindric won the race at Mid-Ohio. So there's that. And it's really getting dark now. Alright, I don't know how this is going to work. Alright, there we go. So several cars come in for service. And now we get to the start of stage number 3. And this is when the caution flags really started flying for whatever reason. So Kurt Busch, who stays out, leads the start of stage number 3. Logano takes the lead coming out of turn 2. So Logano basically, I mean, he dominated a lot of this stage, much like he did back in June. Bubba Wallace gets into Truex's right rear a little bit going into turn 1, but no harm, no foul there. Caution number 2 came out on lap 133 when the 53 of Spencer Boyd spins by himself in turn 4 and backs it into the wall, taking him out of the race. And before the caution came out, Kyle Busch and Truex both passed 3 cars in turn 3. Kyle Busch did, and then Truex followed him through. That was pretty cool. Several cars at the back of the pack come in for service. Logano leads on the restart, but then we immediately get our 3rd caution on lap 137 when Clint Bowyer looked like he either got hooked by Paul Menard or he came down into Menard, because it looked like Menard was trying to back out at 4 wide and basically came together with Bowyer. Don't really know, but it basically sent Bowyer into the outside wall. And Bowyer is one of those guys that are on the inside but are right on the ragged edge of the playoff right now. So not exactly the run, not exactly the day that he needed, with 3 races to go until the playoff starts. Logano leads on the restart once again. Blaney gives Busch a good push and is side by side with Logano and leads the lap, but Blaney then moves up to the outside and pushes Logano back to the lead. And that was our 7th pure lead change on lap 143. Blaney starts closing in on his teammate for the race lead himself, but then we have our 4th, and I believe final caution on lap 149 when Ricky Stenhouse spins in turn 4. Now, as much as I would like to bust his balls for this one, I really can't, because it turned out it was a right rear tire going down. But to his credit, he did save the car and was able to continue, but he did end up finishing 28th, so take that for what you want. I still think he's trash, though. So everyone comes in for service because this is right on the edge of a lot of people's pit windows, so fuel mileage was definitely an issue, which seems to happen a lot at Michigan for whatever reason. Blaney wins the race off pit road. Newman comes back in and tops off the fuel tank, which would actually be a pretty big benefit for him at the end of this race, because he ended up finishing 12th, so that was good for him. So Blaney leads on the restart. We have a Penske Racing 1-2-3 on this restart. Logano goes to the outside and turns 3 and 4 for the lead. And we have our 8th pure lead change on lap 154. Denny Hamlin gets by Menard for the 5th position. So fuel mileage is pretty much on everybody's mind right now. Harvick starts closing in on Keselowski and Blaney for the 2nd position, and moves past Keselowski for 3rd, and then by Blaney for 2nd. Kes and Hamlin go by Blaney for 3rd and 4th. Then Harvick starts closing in on Logano for the lead and eventually makes the race-winning pass on lap 184, our 9th pure lead change of the day. Yes, 9 pure lead changes in this race. And Harvick was good on fuel. And he proved it by doing a pair of burnouts afterwards and even driving to victory lane. So they were not worried about fuel whatsoever. Harvick drives away from the field, and of course they said they were good on fuel, which turned out to be the case. Keselowski's crew did not get all the fuel in their car and has to pit with 12 laps to go. Truex gets by Elliott for the 5th position. Hamlin moves up to 3rd with 5 laps to go. Logano has to pit for fuel with 3 laps to go, so that critically affected his chances of winning the regular season title, which comes with it 15 playoff points. And Harvick holds Denny Hamlin at bay by about 1.5 seconds to win the Consumers Energy 400 at Michigan. 2nd straight year he's won the July race, or the August race in this case. The 3rd time he's won at Michigan, and it's his 2nd win of the year, and 47th victory of his career, moving him up to 16th on the all-time list. And there were several drivers that ran out of fuel, notably Kurt Busch, Ryan Blaney, as well as several others. That was a much, much better race than the one in June. So, alright, so your top 10 finishers in today's race. Kevin Harvick, of course, your winner. Denny Hamlin finishes 2nd to him again, like he did at New Hampshire. Kyle Larson comes back for a 3rd place finish, so great run by him. Truex, after having to start dead last, finishes 4th. Gains more points than anybody today. Daniel Suarez with a top 5 effort, and he actually moves to within 13 points of the playoff cutoff line. Kyle Busch comes home in 6th. Ryan Preece with a 7th place run. So a good run for him, and he's needed one. William Byron, Chase Elliott, and Alex Bowman round out the top 10, 3 of the 4 Hendrick cars. And of course, Jimmy Johnson had his problems early and didn't have a very good finish today. Alright, so the championship standings with 3 races remaining. Kyle Busch continues to lead the way with 892 points. Joey Logano is now 20 points behind. Harvick in third, Hamlin fourth, Truex in fifth, Brad Keselowski sixth. Those standings remain unchanged. Chase Elliott moves up to seventh, Kurt Busch drops to eighth, Ryan Blaney and Alex Bowman move up a spot. Eric Almirola drops 2 spots. William Byron remains where he is in 12th. Kyle Larson moves up a spot. Eric Jones drops a spot. Ryan Newman moves up 2 spots from 17th to 15th. And then Clint Bowyer drops to the bubble line in 16th. See what the gap is between Clint Bowyer and Daniel Suarez. It's 6 points. So Clint Bowyer holds the final spot, but he only holds it by 6 lousy points. And then Jimmy Johnson dropped to 18th, but he's only 12 points out. So that's how close those guys are for the final playoff spot, with 3 races to go. So it's a tight battle for that final playoff spot as we head to Bristol this coming Saturday night. As for my final rating for the Consumers Energy 400 at Michigan, this was actually a pretty good race. Didn't start out that way. First part of stage 1 kind of sucked, but the racing was actually pretty good today, and the fuel mileage was intriguing as well. So I'm going to give the Consumers Energy 400, I'll give it a solid 7 out of 10. It was a pretty good race. And the fuel mileage was pretty good. Had a pretty good number of pure lead changes as well. They got a bit caution happy in stage 3, but once we got into the fuel mileage stuff, it went through all the way to the end. So overall, this was a much better race than the one back in June, for sure. And that's pretty much going to do it for tonight. Thank you very much for watching. It's been a while since I've been outside. Maybe I should have come out a little bit earlier, but you know how that goes. So thank you very much for watching. And until next time, this is the PackerMan signing out. See you next Sunday when I review Bristol and the IndyCar race at Pocono. See you then. Well, that is all for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to rate, comment, favorite, like, and subscribe to my channels here on youtube.com and over on bitchute.com. If you would like to sponsor my channel, go to my channel page at subscribestar.com. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, this is the PackerMan signing out. Have a good one.